Look, there was this back and forth where I drilled him. I said, look, you have the highest cost of living in California. You have the most homelessness in the country in California. You have the highest poverty rate in the country in California. You have the second highest home prices in the country. You guys control the House, the Senate, the governor's mansion, lieutenant governor's mansion, secretary of state, and attorney general, and every statewide elected office for the last 20 years. How is this Republicans' fault? What record are you going to run on? And you could, every time there's anything California specific, you know this from moderating the wonderful DeSantis debate, he gets hyper aggressive and focuses on one little minute detail, and he just tries to bring you down into the ditch. But everyone has been voting with their feet when it comes to California over the last couple of years. They have net population loss. People are leaving in record numbers. They also had the highest gas prices, unnecessarily highest gas tax. And so, look, there's nothing to run on except for the fact that he is very slippery and slick, and he's trying to reinvent and rebrand himself. And look, I'll talk to anybody at any time. There was a whole part, too, where I even got him to tacitly admit that President Trump is unlike any other cultural phenomenon we've ever seen. He's like, oh, yeah, I went to the Oval Office with President Trump, and I had a great time with him. I said, well, are you going to work with President Trump with ICE and immigration and Border Patrol? And, of course, he had a slick answer to that as well. But I think there's a looming Democrat civil war happening because Gavin Newsom is realizing that if he does not come to the middle on a lot of issues and magnify some of his positions, there will be no chance for him in a general election. But President Trump has completely remade the American body politic, and you can start to see the most opportunistic Democrat of them all, Gavin Newsom, at least attempting to adjust with some of his rhetoric. We'll see if his actions follow.
We got to talk about Gavin Newsom today because, of course, as you guys heard there from Charlie Kirk, Gavin Newsom is quite honestly positioning himself for a 2028 presidential run. I think for everyone that is completely clear. At least it looks clear to me. It's quite obvious, especially in some of the things that he's been saying, and we'll get into some of those clips here in a minute. But what I want to talk about is CNN talking about Gavin Newsom, because CNN actually did something that's quite interesting. I'm really shocked, honestly. I really am. But before we get into that, I want to play this clip between Charlie Kirk and Megyn Kelly. I couldn't think of her name there for a second, because I think she says something that's very important. Check it out.
I don't like to see it because my own feeling is this guy's in training for 2028 against JD, probably. That's what we think, will likely be the standard bearer for the Republican Party. And he needs practice. We saw that when he debated Ron DeSantis on Hannity. He needs practice. He's not very good at it. And we should not be helping him. Like, the more times he sits across from Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon and any of our sort of lead fighters, the better he will get, the better he'll do, the more he'll understand how to appeal to people who are more right-wing or independently minded, but on the right. And he doesn't deserve our help, and we shouldn't be in there, like, giving him the assist. So explain to me why you disagree.
Well, now, of course, Charlie Kirk disagrees with that, but I tend to agree with Megyn Kelly. I mean, and you guys can let me know your thoughts, obviously, but I don't think we should be helping Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom is put in a deep hole right now, a deep hole. First off, some of the polls that we've seen, Gavin Newsom isn't towards the top. It's AOC, it's Jasmine Crockett, it's Kamala Harris, it's Pete Buttigieg. All of these folks are ahead of Gavin Newsom already, as it is. But even if we throw that to the side, like, his own party doesn't even really want him. Even if we put that to the side, I mean, look at California. California is controlled by Democrats from top to bottom. Top to bottom. And look how terribly it's run. Let me say this as well. This is no knock to Charlie Kirk. I love Charlie Kirk. I love Charlie Kirk and I love TPUSA. So I don't want anybody to mix that, oh, well, he's taking a shot at Charlie Kirk. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I love Charlie Kirk. I want to put that on record. Okay? I love Charlie Kirk. I love his organization. I love what he does. But here on out, I don't think anybody should communicate with Gavin Newsom. Charlie Kirk actually did us a solid by forcing Gavin Newsom to come out and make some of these bold statements that now are going to look really bad on him.
So, like, you right now should come out and be like, you know what? The young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports, right. that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out say no.
No, and I appreciate
but, like, would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. So that's easy to call out, the unfairness of that. There's also a humility and a grace that these poor people are more likely to commit suicide, have anxiety and depression. And the way that people talk down to vulnerable communities is an issue that I have a hard time with as well. So both things I can hold in my hand. How can we address this issue with the kind of decency that I think, is inherent in you, but not always
force them to say it, even though, did you notice Gavin Newsom, he tried to pull it back there a little bit, play both sides of it. Not gonna work. And what I want to get into here is a clip from CNN where they actually did some journalism for the first time ever. It's honestly incredible. Check it out.
Tonight, quote, "What in God's name is going on with Gavin Newsom?" That's a headline, and there's headline after headline asking that sort of question as the country is trying to figure out how he went from progressive hero and governor of the most liberal state in the country to interviewing and spending time with MAGA favorites like Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk on his new podcast. Tonight, our K-File looked into that, finding that Newsom, well, he's really completely changed his tune on some of the most hot-button issues for Democrats. K-File's Andrew Kaczynski joins me now. And Andrew, just going through some of these, he's got this podcast, and the concept was he wanted to talk to the other side, right? He was going to go into the lion's den. And remember back in the day when he did that debate with DeSantis, right? This is consistent.
Yeah.
So his first time, though, he goes out and he backs away from some unpopular progressive policies, even ones that he's championed. So let's talk about the word Latinx. Just 2 weeks ago, here's what he said about it.
By the way, not one person ever in my office has ever used the word Latinx.
So can we finally put that to bed?
Yeah,
we agree?
where did that even
No more Latinx, everybody.
Well, I just didn't even know where it came from. I'm like, what are people talking about?
But there was a person who used Latinx. It was actually a really important person. It was him, right?
Yeah, that's right. And look, these aren't minor shifts. These are progressive issues that Gavin Newsom used to champion until fairly recently. And now he's not just walking away from them. He's sort of acting like they were never legitimate with that clip talking about Latinx in the first place. But let's take Latinx. We did find somebody who used it repeatedly in his office. Let's take a listen to this.
I hope we can really paint a picture in terms of our consciousness of how impactful this has been on the Latinx community. The Latinx and Black communities. You've got politicians that are banning not assault rifles, but the word Latinx. They're not even serious.
And look, Aaron, those aren't the only times that we found that he used it. He also used it a lot on social media. Look at a few of these right here. You see there, that is a lot of use of Latinx by him for somebody who said that nobody in his office has ever used that phrase.
Right. So that was put upon him. All right. So he's also rewriting history a bit on his stance on transgender issues, which he had a point of view on his podcast, again, just 2 weeks ago. Here's where he is now.
It turns out in 2014, years before I was governor, there was a law established the legal principles that allow trans athletes in women's sports. But the issue of fairness is completely legit. It is an issue of fairness, and I think Democrats have lost that.
No, he didn't always feel that way.
No, that's right. And look, in that statement, he's kind of making it sound like he wasn't involved in this at all. He's like, oh, it was in 2014, years before I was governor. Like, you mean when you were the lieutenant governor? When you actively defended and praised that law? And one of the videos that we found was actually him praising not just the governor at the time, Jerry Brown, but the California state legislature for putting that in place at the time. Take a listen to this.
Thank you for what you did on civil rights for students in our schools, transgender rights in this state.
Okay, so then there's that. Then there's transgender issues, right? Transgender policies. The governor referenced your own reporting on Kamala Harris's support for those taxpayer-funded sex change operations for detained migrants, right? Remember here when we had that conversation? Okay. It sifted the presidential campaign, right? That moment here. So here he is talking about it.
Trump's for you. She's for they, them.
And
devastating.
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 But let's talk about,
she didn't even react to it, which was even more
and let's
devastating.
Talk about.
So he's referring to the ad that they put out using the clip from when you were here. Only a handful of years ago, though, he agreed with Kamala Harris on this very issue.
Yeah, and it has been the law in California to allow transition care for prisoners since 2017. Gavin Newsom didn't speak out or say anything about it until now, 5 years later, when it became a political liability. And in fact, he signed a landmark transgender rights bill for prisoners that affirmed their right to have this type of care. And he approved a state Medicaid expansion that also extended gender affirming care to undocumented immigrants. So his record on this is really not matching the rhetoric that he was putting out in that podcast.
All right. So what's he saying tonight about all this?
So we reached out to their spokespeople. They declined to comment on record. They sent us on background comments that said that he's worked to protect transgender youth. They said, quote, Latinx is not a term that is regularly used by the administration. And they did not clarify his comments on transgender prisoners at all, saying only that the governor's comments speak for themselves.
All right. Well, I guess they do.
For the first time ever, CNN actually does some journalism, actually does some unbiased journalism, and critiques a Democrat. Ironic enough, that Democrat actually was speaking out against the Democrat Party, so I can't give him too much credit, but what do you know? What do you know? CNN may have found their stride. I doubt it. Highly doubt it. They haven't at all. They're going to go right back to the same old Trump derangement syndrome they've always been in. But, wishful thinking, I guess. Wishful thinking, Maybe the higher-ups are tired of losing money, tired of hemorrhaging dollars because people aren't watching them anymore, so they're going to do some fair journalism now. I don't know. Well, I think I do know. It's not happening, but... yeah, on point too. Brought the facts with the footage and the clips to go with it, with the social media posts. I love it. If they did this all the time, they would have a full audience. If they were completely honest and unbiased and just told it like it is, CNN will be popping. I'm just saying, but unfortunately they can't do that. They're Trump deranged, so this will be very short-lived. But anyway, yeah, man, Gavin Newsom's in some big trouble, in some major trouble. But let me know if you guys agree with Megyn Kelly, or do you think Charlie Kirk is probably right on the situation? I think he went on to say that Gavin Newsom's basically F, so it really doesn't matter too much, whether or not Republicans go on his show and talk to him, because he's already he's already F'd. So let me know. You agree with Megyn Kelly and I, or Charlie Kirk? Or you have a different opinion? Talk to me. Thanks for tuning in as always. Peace and love. I'm out.